Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Effective Grant Management, Lessons from Community Development, Disaster Recovery, and Infrastructure. We have a very special guest here today, Victoria Rojas, who is the Senior Budget and Financial Advisor in Miami, Florida. As you can see, we are going to talk about grant management, but spanning a wide breadth of departments. So really excited to be having this conversation. My name is Susanna. I am one of the founders of Forerunner. And with that, let's get started.
Mhm.
All right, we'll start with an introduction, and we're trying a little bit of a new format. We're going to do a trivia, and then we will get to a Q&A with Victoria. And here's the trivia. So this is what I promised you might want your cell phone for. And again, if you don't get to it or you don't want to participate, don't worry, but we do have a prize. Um,
Mhm.
so this is Kahoot. We're going to do some trivia interactively. You can go to www.kahoot.it and then type in this game pin, or you can scan the QR code that's here. So we're going to give it a couple minutes so that you can do it, and then we can see people jumping in. A lot of you are very fast clickers. I'm really impressed by how quickly these names started populating. All right. Just gonna give it a couple more minutes so that we're not yanking the website from you, but it's www.kahoot.it. I think we'll try to type in the chat as well, and then uh, enter the game pin, which is 4893274, and then we'll get started. And let us know if you like the trivia. I feel like we might have quorum now. All right. All right. Some grant management trivia. Um, whoa, it's getting started. All right. First question. In what decade did the US federal government first launch a centralized system for public grant opportunities? The 1980s, 2000s, 60s, or 70s? What decade was the first centralized system for public grant opportunities? A bunch of people are answering, which is amazing. I'm so glad that this is working. And the answer is the 2000s, I believe, but most people answered 1980s, which is very close to the 2000s. So pretty recently, actually. We have a scoreboard. I should have warned you about this. If you're Bea, congratulations for getting that first answer correct. It's actually ranked on both speed and also answer. So if you answer quickly, you'll get more points. All right, second question. What was the first federal grant program and what was its purpose? What was the first federal grant program? What was its purpose? I'm not going to read each one of these, but we have the Northwest Ordinance, Homestead Expansion Act, Coastal Learning Initiative, or Franklin Education Charter. I personally don't know the answer to this question, but I'm sure Victoria does. All right. The answer is actually Northwest Ordinance, but most people answered Homestead Expansion Act. The number is actually very similar to the last question as well. Okay. Oh, interesting. A couple of additional people on the leaderboard now. Labea is still leading with 880 points. And I think we just have one more trivia question. Yes, 3 out of 3. Roughly how many federal grant programs exist across U.S. agencies today? 300, 1,000, 2,000, or 800? Gotta go fast. Gotta be right. This is the last question. If you're feeling like you were brought into a webinar, but now you're sweating, I'm sorry. But you have 30 seconds left to answer this question. And actually, for the first time, the most people got the correct answer, which is 2,000 the most. And that's what I would have guessed as well. Amazing. Okay, thank you for participating in the trivia. This is actually Victoria's idea, which I really liked. And we have third place, Nikki, second place, Krista, and first place, who's our first place person? Bea. Amazing. Okay, Bea led the entire time. Congratulations. Um, so our prize is a pickleball set, a Forerunner branded pickleball set. Hopefully, Bea, you play pickleball, and we will send you an email to get your mailing information after this. And you have a bunch of people congratulating you as well. Let us know if you like this. It was kind of fun for me. And Victoria, did you like it as well? Yeah.
Yeah, I told you it would be fun. I
Yeah,
love
she
it.
told us it would be fun, and we were like, oh,
Yes.
apparently our webinars are very boring without trivia, so now we're pretty exciting. Awesome. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to get back to the boring stuff for a little bit, but then we're going to get back to the exciting stuff with Victoria. So, a bunch of housekeeping. The presentation is being recorded, and we will share that and the presentation deck with you afterwards via email. So, don't worry about taking aggressive notes or anything like that. Just hang out. Feel free to answer or post any of your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to them. I'll try to weave them in or ask them at the end. And then we're offering one ASFPM CEC and point 0.1 ICC CEU for being here. There's a post-attendance survey, so that's the thing that we're going to use to count your credit, and then we'll send the certificate to ASFPM and ICC next week. And then, as always, please reach out after the webinar if you have any questions. We'll give you Victoria's information and then as well as ours, so we would love to be in touch. All right. This is my typical webinar introduction. If you've been to any of our webinars, you've heard me say this 1 million times. We're Forerunner, and we do a bunch of different things, but we get the pleasure of working with over 175 of the most at-risk cities, counties, and states throughout the US. We host these webinars because we meet with a lot of you across a bunch of different disciplines, across floodplain management, emergency management, grant management, code compliance, about the work that you do. And we get to learn about the amazing work that people like Victoria do. And we host these webinars in order to sort of amplify their voices and share what they're up to.
Mhm.
And if you're not familiar with Foreigner, Foreigner empowers government agencies to do more. We're a software company. And the reason why we're really excited to have this specific speaker is because we got our start in floodplain management, as many of you know, but we have started to support some of our partner communities in their grant workflows from eligibility to application. And then we also help to centralize and manage grant documents by property. A lot of these are things that Victoria will talk about generally. We also help to draft letters in seconds using AI. So we have a lot of features that we recently launched that we're pretty excited about in grant management. In doing the product development for this, we did a bunch of research and stumbled upon Victoria's amazing work as well. Oh, and then also sharing data and documents via public websites. So if you are interested in Forerunner and what we do to support grant management, please reach out. Okay, this is the second interactive part, and then I swear I will not make you guys do a bunch more things. But we would love to poll you, and instead of using the Zoom poll, we're actually going to use Mentimeter this time. So doing all of our interactive things at once as an experiment. So this one, you'll have to scan the QR code, I believe. Oh, or you can join at menti.com using the code at the very top, 77041294. And this one's cool because you'll get to see everyone's answers. The first question is, where are you calling from? I know a lot of you introduced yourselves via the chat, but it's clear that you guys are coming from all over the place. So a bunch of people from Mississippi, New Hampshire, Oklahoma City, California. We're kind of representing all of the coasts here. I'm trying to see if there's Florida. Okay, yeah, there's Florida. I was like, Victoria, that would not be great.
In Miami specifically.
Yes. Oh,
Hmm.
there's Miami specifically.
Yes.
And then the bigger words, I think, represent multiple people sort of inputting that value. So lots of people from California, lots of people from Massachusetts, lots of people from New Hampshire, even though, and Massachusetts, even though your states aren't physically that large. So amazing,
Very good.
amazing attendance. Great. Second question, which type of entity do you work for? So do you work for a government agency? Do you work for a private company, federal government, local government? Um, Amazing.
Tribal.
Tribal nation.
Hmm.
Oh, charter school.
Yeah.
Uh,
Education.
yeah, amazing. This is an amazing turnout.
Very good.
Cool. I forgot to mention that this will also help Victoria kind of tailor some of what she talks about to be applicable. Local government, she's in local government, so it's perfect.
Excellent.
Awesome. And then the third question, this is the final question. What type of grants have you worked with? Um, I mean, I'm sure that you all have worked with all sorts of grants. You could also say, haven't really worked with grants if you haven't to date. That will be good information for Victoria to know as well. Um, federal,
Housing.
what's that? Housing?
What
Yeah.
time is, yeah, if it's housing or infrastructure.
Is this what you expected?
Yeah, yeah, this is good. Federal,
Awesome.
state. I wanted to see more of the department of the federal government that where the
Yeah.
fund are the funding sources of your grants if you have grants.
Hmm.
This is great, great information. Thank you.
Perfect. Oh, someone put a very long answer. That person types very fast.
FEMA, very good. I'm
Awesome.
gonna talk about FEMA.
Okay, great. Amazing.
Thank
Um,
you.
Thank you so much for doing that as well. And with that, I will introduce Victoria. So you've heard from her already. Victoria Rojas is a senior budget and financial advisor. She has over 20 years of experience in grant management, business process optimization, government accounting, and financial reporting. She's originally from Colombia, where she's going to be next week to celebrate her son's birthday, which is very exciting.
Yes.
And she's built a career in public service, notably with the city of Miami, which I know we all look to for best practices. So we're excited to have this conversation. Her work includes leading financial recovery efforts for Hurricane Irma, securing over $60 million in FEMA aid, and streamlining disaster claims processes. She currently provides support in the management of over $127 million in grant funding for the city's Department of Resilience and Public Works. I know later on she's going to be talking about a project that she's proud of, and we are very excited to learn from her today.
Mhm.
And we're doing a Q&A format, so you will continue hearing from me, but you will hear much more from Victoria. And we'll
Nadine.
start just by learning about your background, Victoria. Can you share the story of how you first got into grant management? We would love to know who or what inspired you to pursue this path.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's very nice to be here with you. My first 11 years in the city of Miami were in the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is a department almost fully funded by grants, mainly from HUD. I learned grants and government finance from the best. Definitely. It's a great team. They are like a little college of grants within the city. They share their knowledge all the time, and it was very good to have worked with them for so long. I'm very proud of that. My mentor used to say that we were like modern Robin Hoods redistributing wealth. And from grants.gov, it says billions of dollars in federal grants are awarded each year for programs and projects that benefit the public. This assistance is rooted in the Constitution and it's called to promote the general welfare. Then, many years ago, when I was in community development in charge of the payments for rental assistance, I received a call from a woman who sounded just like me. Similar accent, similar age, and her voice denoted distress and said she was calling to make sure that everything was in order with her upcoming rental assistance payments because she was about to be hospitalized and needed to make sure that her children would have a place to live while she was away. As you can imagine, I felt identified because I also had two little ones at home from whom to care and provide. And that's where I made that personal connection with grants and I fell in love with it. And my life took me in that route.
I think it's a beautiful, beautiful story, and I think having such a personal connection to the work that you do, I think is, not everybody has that, and it sounds like it really sort of like helps to drive your work. So, um, thank you for sharing that. I think that's a good segue into our next question, which is like, obviously, the work is very personal to you, and I'm curious to know sort of what part of the grant management process you find most rewarding.
Well, even though I no longer work in programs to assist individuals directly, Definitely helping people is the most rewarding part. As they say, public service is personal. And I think helping others is a call in life. Now, talking about my recent work, feeling I make a difference to help the city of Miami be more resilient is extremely rewarding too. I love the city. In the Department of Resilience and Public Works, I've had the opportunity to help with the compliance of grants for large infrastructure projects to fight sea level rise, like drainage structures, water pumps, and seawalls. We also have a small grant from the Department of Agriculture that is aimed to plant trees in areas that have the most heat vulnerability. That is very cool.
I think that's something that I'm constantly impressed with the work of the city in general is the fact that you all are able to sort of tackle resilience projects that really run the gamut in terms of scale and type. And I would love to learn more, but I won't ask you a question about this right now about sort of like how you juggle all these like different these different grants that all have different requirements. But I think that that's also a good segue into our next question, which is, what are the biggest challenges that you face and how do you overcome them?
Okay. I will tackle the different funding sources in one project later on. I
Sure.
will I will go in depth into that. But about the challenges that we have to face, I would not talk about the challenges that I face personally, but that at an institutional level, right? The most difficult part is to integrate all the pieces of the puzzle to make the grants succeed, right? The first step is to apply for a grant and obtain it. We have a grants department that is great at that. Then you have to coordinate procurement, finance, and of course, the managing department who has to execute the program and do it in compliance with the awards that they're receiving. So obtaining a grant is a big achievement. And like I said, our grants team is awesome. The leader is Lilian Blondet, also community development alumni. Then compliance starts, right? After you get the grant, you need to start executing everything so the compliance is perfect. Procurement is a key component of the equation and it can make it or break it. I mean, if you do the procurement process incorrectly, you could have to go back and cure and do amendments and things that will hinder the correct flow of the operations. Luckily, we have a fantastic team who's very proficient in federal and state procurement and supports the departments that deliver the programs. This is a continuous process of learning, right? Because each award is different. Each funding source has different requirements. But in general, federal requirements are federal requirements for grants. We also have a highly specialized finance department that facilitates the financial compliance of grants. And finally, the Department of Community Development that I have talked about before, that is always willing to share their knowledge and experience in grants. The second challenge that I want to mention here is related to infrastructure projects, which are usually very large. Then that goes to your previous question, Susana. They're very large and they have several funding sources. Usually funding sources require a match from local funds, or you can get them from other funding sources. And these funding sources can be local, federal, state, and county. And balancing all of them, getting the adequate level of funding for these big projects, right? These are big projects. There are variances in prices over time. You know that the prices of materials have increased greatly in the last few years. So if it changes, you have to make adjustments, and the grant is not necessarily that flexible to adjust to the changes in the project. So it is a challenge. It is a challenge that the city has to face for some of the projects. Of course, the way that those are being tackled is hiring schedulers, having a lot of great people, very professional people that know what they're doing and can project costs and timelines in a correct manner. It's not 100% bulletproof, but it's good. I think that we have a very great team.
You've spoken quite a bit just in your answers to the last couple questions about, the wonderful team that you have, and you also sound like a super collaborative person. And I guess I'm curious. Um, this was actually one of the pre-submitted questions for the webinar, and it's, how do you foster collaboration across departments that have many different priorities or pressures? It sounds like on one hand you have just like a bunch of teams that are great at collaborating, so you probably don't have to do a ton of work there. But I'm
Mhm.
curious to know if you have any sort of tips on how to bring everyone together. You talked about the puzzle pieces, right? So how do you make the puzzle pieces fit each other? Do you have any lessons there that you want to share?
Sure. There are the main 5 lessons that I have learned within, I mean, throughout my career. I would start with the five. I'm gonna start with the fifth one. Lesson number 5 is create processes and forms with the end in mind. The processes should not be repetitive and should flow from one step to the next without going back to previous actors, right? So when you have a process, it should look like a calm river going from one step to the next and one responsible person to the other, doing what they have to do. It shouldn't go back or create loops. The, the more fluid it is, the better. Also, I want to talk about forms a little because the forms don't receive the importance that they deserve. For everyday processes, forms are the best way of documenting compliance items. For example, a cover page for invoices that require signatures for Davis-Bacon review, grants compliance review, inspections. When you have that form in the cover of your invoices, and everyone who has done that review signs in there, at the end of your process, it's very easy to prove compliance, right? Audits become very easy because you're leaving clear evidence just by following your processes. So that would be my number 5.
Awesome. Super helpful. And also, um, you you saying that forms are really important also speaks to the heart of what we do at Foreigner because we also think forms are super important.
Yes, they should
I
be
also know
simple.
what's that?
That they should be simple. I advocate for simple forms, but that include all the compliance elements that you should have, especially if you're talking about forms that support grants that are used with grants.
Yeah, and I think that's it's a really powerful statement just because, it seems really obvious that the form should be simple, but sometimes people will create a form and then someone will want to add a field like a couple years later and someone will want to add another field and then you end up with a form that is not simple or it has like redundant things. And so I think that that's a really important call out. I
Yes,
also know you have 4 more lessons, so we would love to learn some of the other lessons that you have.
sure. Lesson number 4, no commingling. I mean, for those of you who are familiar with grants, know that this is a bad word. This is like a mortal sin, right? Penalties for commingling federal grant funds range from administrative actions like returning funds and suspension of future awards to severe civil penalties and criminal prosecution under statutes like the False Claim Act. Consequences depend on the severity and intent of the violation, of course, potentially leading to fines, debarment from future federal funding, and even imprisonment. So it's really serious and you need to stay away from it. Make sure that your organization has the appropriate financial system. I think that that's the main key of compliance with this. You need to have the appropriate accounting structure so your grants are tracked separately from each other. The procedures and control in place have to be in place, of course, to ensure that separate tracking of financial activity is kept for each grant.
I think that's a great lesson, particularly for maybe smaller communities that don't necessarily have like a ton of grants, but might be interested in kind of scaling up, keeping in mind that being able to track appropriately is like one of the sort of most important things to put in
Mhm.
place at the beginning. What's your third one?
Okay, lesson number 3. develop relationships with key players. This is very important. I was overseeing the grant management for FEMA PA for Hurricane Irma with the city. And I learned that developing those relationships with the key players, not only within the organization, but also with the funding sources, is super important and super helpful. Grant management is an activity that thrives with human contact. Funding sources are interested in helping recipients use their funds since that reflects on their own performance. So don't be afraid to pick up the phone and ask questions. Contact a person, talk to them, ask your questions. If you have suggestions, just connect. That's the message. If you attend events and have the chance to meet with representatives from your funding sources, take the opportunity and introduce yourself with a big smile. That will make a difference, I can assure you.
I that's it's interesting that you said it because I was recently talking to someone on the grant side of things who was just talking about how they like they never sort of talk to the person on the other side of things. I think we kind of forget that that is an opportunity as well.
Oh.
And then I think your last couple are also sort of like similarly. I guess I'm struck as you kind of go through these about how like they're both common sense, but also things that people don't necessarily do all the time. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, people sometimes are very shy about contacting the funding sources because they think that they don't know enough and they may make a mistake.
Yeah.
Of course, contacting the funding source should be done after being familiar with your grant. I mean, don't ask things that you should know because they would expect you to be familiar with what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
But with that said, if you cover that base, it's definitely better to have a relationship with someone where you can you can build from it, you know?
Yeah, I think your call out that, the incentives are aligned. And so it's not like a conversation that you're having with like an adversary, but rather someone who's like incentives are aligned with yours is like an important one.
Mhm.
And then I also think that, you saying like do your research before calling, but don't be afraid to call is a good segue into your second lesson.
Sure. Okay. The second lesson is understand the compliance supplement. The compliance supplement is issued by the Office and Management and Budget yearly, and it has all the parameters, all the things that will be audited for grants, right? So you should read the compliance supplement for the grants to be reported on that fiscal year for the grants that you manage and make sure that all the compliance areas are covered. Answer the questions of the internal control questionnaire provided by the auditors ahead of time. I mean, just ask for that questionnaire ahead of time and start answering the questions because that's like having the questions of an exam ahead of time. And when the time comes of the audit, you have everything covered. You can use it from the last year. If the one of the current year has not been issued and you started working in a grant, you can use the one from the previous years because they don't change that much. The questions of the internal control questionnaire are going to be more or less the same, and it definitely allows you to know if you need to be prepared for something regarding the subawards, if your grants have subawards, if internal controls, cash management. It's very thorough. It's very, very thorough. So you may want to look at that. It's a good tool.
Yeah, I think your point about having all the answers to the questions ahead of time is well taken.
Mhm.
I think sometimes, uh, particularly in grant management, we hear, that it, it's hard to find the answers to things or whatever. I think like your third lesson and your second lesson together make a lot of sense on that front, right? It's like one, read everything that's available to you, and then, or I guess two, read everything that's available to you, and three, just pick up the phone if there's anything that you're sort of missing. I think that those two together make it a lot less opaque, or I think the way that you're framing it probably for the audience makes it a little bit less intimidating.
Yes, and that takes us to number one. Lesson number one, if my friends from grants are in the within the audience, they know this answer, right? Read the contract. That's the big one. Always read the contract. Either the grant contract, the sub-award agreements, the contracts with the vendors, that those are important, right? The contracts with the vendors when you're dealing with contractors are very important. You need to know what you're asking them to do too. It's not only reading the contract that you are executing, but I'm sorry, not executing, but the one that you're delivering on, but the contracts that you have with your vendors and your sub-grantees. You also need to be familiar with the program guide, of course, all the guidelines. Make sure that you understand all the requirements. And in case of doubt, go to recommendation number 3. Talk to your funding sources.
Yeah, I like that it's a decision chart also. Read the things, go back to lesson number three. Maybe going back to lesson number three is actually like the thing that we should all be doing in all of our work, regardless of whether or not we're in grants. Pick up the phone, ask someone for help if you need it, or if you feel like you don't know what's going on.
Yes, absolutely. I think that actually what I was going to say when you were talking about the challenges and how we overcome them, I think
Yeah,
one is communication. Communication, I mean, just communicate. Sometimes we get tangled in emails going back and forth, including more people. And the more complicated it gets, the worse answer you're gonna get. Sometimes it's better just to pick up the phone, call a friend, and
yeah.
ask the question.
I bet that no one that came to this webinar thought that it would be like a sort of self-help motivational thing, but hopefully Victoria's motivating all of us to be more networked and to communicate a little bit more thoroughly with the people around us. So thanks for that lesson, Victoria.
Okay.
I have a lot of questions about your lessons, but I do also want to get to some of our previous questions or our subsequent questions. So maybe I'll hold them for later. Um, would love to sort of talk a little bit more about the impact of your work. Is there a particular grant or project that stands out as especially meaningful in your career?
Absolutely. Yes. I have my favorite. Uh, and this is Dinner Key Marina. I know Diego is in the audience. Diego Clavijo is the program manager that I teamed up with because he's an engineer and I think that we made a great team with this project. Here you can see some pictures of Hurricane Irma in Dinner Key Marina. You can see the level of the water, right? It went really high and it was really scary. It caused a lot of damage. Mm, After Hurricane Irma came in 2017, it destroyed approximately 60% of the dockage in that marina. All 9 piers suffered significant damage. I would say Dinner Key Marina is an iconic facility. There you can see also a picture and an aerial view of our beautiful marina. I love that place. It's very nice and it's right next to City Hall. So I think we are connected to it. It serves over 580 slips. Imagine that. And this is the largest marina owned by the city of Miami. Okay, this little spreadsheet, I'm an Excel nerd. I love Excel. And this is a summary, it's a summarized version, like a small version of the spreadsheet that we created to define and keep track of the funding structure of this project. It revolves around FEMA public assistance, as I said before, right? And we had to, of course, follow the program rules and regulations. When facilities suffer extensive damage from a natural disaster, FEMA sends an inspector and provides what is known as the DDD. The DDD stands for damage description and dimensions. And for the marina, it had more than 450 items. It went into great detail, pier by pier, saying what were the elements that needed to be repaired and what were the elements that the hurricane damaged, basically, right? It was very, very detailed. So going back to my lessons, I had the end in mind, and I knew that the reimbursement request for FEMA PA would be reviewed based on that DDD. So I teamed up with the construction manager at that time, Robert Fenton, and the program manager that I already mentioned, Diego, to have the contractor prepare their invoices with a schedule of values that mirrored that DDD. So the contractor would send every time that they send us an invoice, that invoice was broken down in all those little lines right from the beginning. So in here, let me tell you a little bit about the colors so you get a better idea of what they mean. The yellow area is the list of all the hurricane related damages. The green area are the non-hurricane related damages, maybe things that were broken from before or that the city needed to repair, but did not have any relation with the hurricane. And then you can see the little orange is the mitigation area. Those are the items for the mitigation, which is a separate grant, right? FEMA treats it as like a separate funding source, kind of. It's within FEMA PA, but it's separate at the same time. Now, as you can see, the blue column represents the main, the FEMA funded items. And then you can see, next to the blue one, you can see FEMA funded items. And then the other columns represent other grants that we had to get for that specific project. So we were juggling with different grants, find from the state and FEMA PA and FEMA hazard mitigation as well. I think that we had some local funding, but I'm not sure about that. I think that most of it was funded through the state and FEMA. So with this structure, the reimbursement process was super easy and the funds were recovered expeditiously. The state was super happy to see how our invoices matched the DDD, and they could easily review, see that the invoices were tackling exactly the items that were approved, and then they were able to issue the payments in a very expeditious way. So that way the city could recover financially also, right? The idea is to have the least amount of time within from the disbursement, that the payment to the contractors, and the reimbursement that you get from your funding sources. So this was a very, very nice loop. Very good.
I'm just struck by the fact that you said it was a little spreadsheet at the beginning. I don't know what a big spreadsheet looks like to you. This
No,
is
this is a spreadsheet. This is a big spreadsheet. I think I was being ironic.
yeah. It's just tiny. It's just teeny tiny. Maybe it's little because the text is little because it's so big that it doesn't fit
No,
on the screen.
this is just a sample, right?
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
had
exactly.
to
Um,
hide some rows. But here you can see that. And also at the bottom, we put the payment and the retainage,
mhm.
which is another component of construction projects that is very important to keep track of. You need to keep track of how much you're retaining and how much you're withholding for retainage and how much you are releasing from retainage. And that's more related about accounting.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It is just super organized spreadsheet. I'm curious, like how many people sort of contributed to an ongoing basis, or did you sort of like manage the kind of master spreadsheet so that it was
I created It was
Hmm.
a, like I said, it was a team effort. I remember we had to work with a specialized firm
Mm,
to put the DDD in terms of the hurricane related damages and in the language that the contractor would assimilate to what they were doing, right? And then the construction manager was the one who sent me the lines, and I put it together in like you see it here in Excel.
mm,
The very first column indicates use this award until depleted, then use this other award. In it's basically use first the insurance award because in FEMA PA you need to use insurance funds first
yeah.
and then move to the award of the specific assistance. So it has some instructions that were given to the Office and Management and Budget of the city. OMB were the ones, they are the ones who were in charge of making the payments. So they needed to follow, these were like instructions, it was like a map for them to say, okay, I received this invoice, so this goes to this award, this other goes to that award, this item goes here, that item has to be paid from there. And it was like a good roadmap that everyone could follow.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And the alignment is it's very satisfying to my like organizational brain. I guess I'm curious to know, like, was it difficult to ensure that the contractor's schedule values stayed aligned with the DDD throughout the project? Or was it like, everyone was just like aligned with using the same format?
Everyone was aligned. Everyone was aligned from the beginning.
I feel like you operate in a world where everyone is like just like great at doing the thing, which is
Maybe at some point I mean, it was not perfect. I
yeah.
remember that at one time I talked to one of the people from OMB and he said, "Oh, I didn't know that these
Oh yeah.
instructions were here." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry it didn't get to you, but yes, now you know
Yeah.
that the
Easy.
instructions are here. This is how you have to do it."
Yeah, awesome. And then I know you sort of spoke to the fact that there was the PA and then like the additional awards that you used to kind of fill in there. That the awards have different documentation or compliance requirements that you had to juggle.
Not really because I mean, to require to a ver, ¿cómo le digo? Like the eligibility of these
Hmm.
awards um, was covered or contemplated from the beginning, right? When the award was applied for.
Yeah.
Like I said, our grants department is very good at getting grants. So we got with Lillian and we said, Lillian, this is the shortage we have for this project. Can you help us get this money? And she said, sure, there are these find awards available that would fit perfectly because we can use match funds from the state when you're gonna match federal funds. And she got these items. So the compliance, the eligibility part was covered, right? And when the reimbursement part came, it's all the same because all you have to present is your invoices and the proof of payment. And your invoices are showing that the costs that you're paying for are eligible in your grant. It's like I said, we followed the process, we had the forms, and at the end the result was very good because of that.
Yeah, I think it's super helpful to hear how like the sort of lessons that you articulated maybe in abstract earlier kind of map onto um an actual example. And so I really appreciate that. I have one more question on this, but then I know we have just one more sort of set of questions. But if you, I guess, had to do this specific project again, is there anything that you would do differently, or do you feel like it was I mean, it sounds like it was extremely successful, but just wondering if there's
Yes, it
anything you
was
would
very
change.
good.
Hmm.
It was and I enjoyed a lot doing it. I don't remember if I would do something different. Probably I would communicate better with the people that I know now that didn't get
Mm,
that part
yeah,
of the story. Mm, other than that, I think that we did good. We did great.
yeah. And it sounds like it was pretty easy for you to like, once you realized that like, someone didn't understand, like just to provide them with that information.
Yeah, it was a very good teamwork. I think it was very good.
Awesome. Um, I think maybe just tying a bow. I know this section is sort of focused on impact. So I guess our last question is, how have you seen grants directly impact a community or an individual? Would love to sort of hear about your kind of real world experience.
Mhm. Well, I think they always impact the community and individuals specifically. Like I said, the FEMA PA program for COVID, for Hurricane Irma financial recovery. In Irma, we received almost $60 million, like you said at the beginning. And and it was for several activities that we had to do, not only emergency activities, but reconstruction projects like the one that I just talked about. In community development, I've seen how the grants impact so many people with rental assistance, with social services, first-time home buyer, rehabilitation assistance. Um, it really makes a difference. The grants really make differences in a lot of people lives and in the communities, right? I'm looking forward to see how our urban forestry grant, the little one that I talked before, unfolds, because it has a component of education for the community, for some individuals, and it's gonna be nice, and all the trees that they're gonna plant in those areas where the heat factor is so high is gonna have a tremendous effect on the individuals, right? You would say it's just trees, but it's not just trees, because that makes a difference in weather and climate, in the way that people feel. So the communities are gonna be better off.
I think that's a really hopeful note to land on. And I also know we got a couple of questions in the chat and we had some pre-submitted ones, but I think those were all of the like the structure questions that we had for you, but we have 10 minutes left, so maybe we can ask you some of the sort of broader strategic questions that came in. And I think they kind of knit pretty well together. For anyone in the audience, if you do have questions, I'm going to grab the couple that you saw come in, but feel free to type them up and I'll see if I can kind of weave them together in a coherent way. We have a couple, and I really like these two questions together, Victoria, because I think they're both like sort of high level, like what are your thoughts on this, like the the space at large, maybe. The first one comes from Dorian Gibson, who you actually might know from Miami.
Hi,
Um,
Dorian.
Hi, Dorian. And
Hi,
it's a
Dorian.
really well-framed question, so I'm just going to read it verbatim. What strategies have proven most effective in balancing compliance requirements with the flexibility needed to adapt grants to community-driven priorities during long-term projects such as disaster recovery or infrastructure development? So just stated another way, you're balancing like both the compliance requirements, but then also the fact that you need to adapt grants to what your community needs and sort of what is successful there.
Mm,
It's a hard question, actually.
yeah, I'm trying to break it down a little to give a good answer. Um, I think, well, like you said, Dorian, always read the agreement, right? So you have to read the agreement to know what you have to comply with. And when the grants are applied for and awarded to the city, there is there is a need to be covered in mind, right? You never just apply for something with an open-ended result. You have a grant for specific results. So going back to what I had said before, I always have the end in mind. So what is it that you have to comply with? And always design everything going there, right? So for example, with the grant for the beautification unit of resilience and public works, we have sub-awardees, and we need to make sure. I know that we have to monitor compliance and all that. So in all the meetings that we're having for that grant, we know that we have to have certain documents. And going back to the forms, create the forms that will allow you to prove compliance. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what we do. And for I think that the FEMA answers, or the FEMA talk that I gave before answers that second part of your question about long-term projects for disaster recovery or infrastructure development.
Yeah, I think that does answer the question. And like maybe Dorian chime in because it's your question, but you saying that aligning, just being aligned to at the outset, right? Like you have a goal in mind and apply for grants like intentionally, as opposed to kind of just like doing whatever and then hoping to like sort of make that fit what you would
Exactly.
do.
Exactly.
I think that totally makes sense. And Dorian is reinforcing us saying that it answered the question
Thank
as
you,
well too.
Dorian.
The second question that came in from Eugene Henry at Clearwater is similarly difficult, I think, but we would love your reflection on it. And he also notes that it's kind of hard. But just verbatim, the question is, with your experience, what types of expertise and how large of a team make it easier to have a successful grants program? If you have an answer to that, that'd be awesome. But then, another rephrasing of it you might um, like is what makes for a good grants team.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a great question too. The team will have to have, I mean, the knowledge that you need in your team to make the grant succeed includes procurement, of course, grants to apply I mean, how to apply for the grant and what are the grants that are available, what is the best fit for your needs. Second will be procurement. Procurement is always extremely important. It's always, always, always extremely important because regular procurement, I mean, your institution may have a set of procurement rules and procedures, but they need to comply. When you apply for grants and you apply for federal grants specifically, you need to meet a bunch of requirements that are not the regular day-to-day for a procurement unit. So you need to make sure that you do affirmative actions, for example, for minorities, and you need to document that. So you need a very good procurement team that are familiar with the federal requirements and that is always documenting that. Finance is important, very, very important, because they need to know what goes and what doesn't go in accounting, in grants accounting, which is a big area of attention as well. And of course, the department that has to deliver the project, the program, right? They need to know about the grant. And sometimes they're like, oh my God, this is so annoying. But they need to get familiar with it in order and comply in order to get the money and to keep it. Because one thing is to get the money, something else is to keep it, to keep it, because you need to meet so many requirements for that. But it's worth it. I think it's totally worth it.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
was actually a very thorough answer to the question and really appreciate it. And Eugene is also saying that it really sort of helped as
You're
well.
welcome.
And I know we only have 5 more minutes. Maybe I'll just ask one more question.
Sure.
So I think, everything that you shared today kind of represents a very significant amount of institutional knowledge. Your career has been wide-ranging and you've been able to sort of pick up a bunch of lessons along the way and become an expert. Curious to know, if someone is just getting started, thinking back to when you were early in your career, what resources would you kind of recommend for getting up and running? Obviously, coming to this webinar and lesson number three is an important one, right? Like call a friend if you have any questions. But are there any additional resources that you would point people to that sort of were helpful for
I
you learning?
Yes, yes. One big resource that now I am a member of is the National Grants Management Association, NGMA. Um, I think it's very important to be part of this community of grants management because we all talk the same language, and it's important to participate and exchange ideas. It's very good.
Awesome. Yeah, I do think that that those kinds of forums are like especially useful for just like being in the same room with everyone who does the same thing that you do.
Yes, it's a
Um,
support group too
yeah,
for emotional
absolutely.
distress if you need it.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, I think with that we will end. I know there were a couple more questions, but hopefully we'll be able to answer them offline.
Sure.
I think after Ashton can go to the next slide, we can share contact information. And so hopefully Victoria is ready for this, but if you want to email her, you can. Any sort of follow-up
Yes, it's
questions.
fine.
And then my email is here as well if you have any questions more broadly. And
Thank
I
you.
speak for all of us, Victoria, when I say thank you so much for your time and
Thank
for
you.
answering all of our questions. It's really great to
I
hear about.
appreciate it. It's been fun. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks. Have a great day.
Bye.